dive into what, thank you, recording in progress. Let's go to the next slide and I'll dive into what our goals for today are. So first of all, we are going to share some outcomes from sub-regional community outreach and engagement. We're going to provide information about upcoming regional funding opportunities. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to hear from you in a Mentimeter activity. So before moving on to our agenda, I'll talk a little bit about the collaborative. The collaborative is made up of over 150 organizations and individuals. And here on the call today are people that are newer to this process, are people that have already heard a lot about this process. So acknowledge that everyone's kind of coming in from different points. And if you've already heard some of the things, then we'll leave it to you to manage how you're tuning in. But if you're new to this, you're going to hear a lot of new information. In our last meeting, we featured our research partners from Cities GPS and Brookings Institution to talk about some of the quantitative data. Today, we're going to hear more about community engagement. We're going to hear from our sub-regional community partners to talk about what they've been hearing on the ground. So I'm really excited about that. Let's go to the next slide so we can look at the agenda. Okay, so what are the next couple hours going to look like? First, we're going to do a timeline recap, and we're going to share some new updates, including updates from the state. We want to make sure we're always anchored in our core goals of what this initiative is and keeping us all oriented into where we are in the process. So we're going to look at our North Star and talk about where we are in the timeline and in the process. And then, like I said, we're going to hear outcomes from community outreach and engagement. And I'm really excited about that because I know there's very rich information that has come out of about maybe 10 months of community engagement now. And so hearing a lot about what are the opportunities and barriers that people are experiencing out in the community, and that's going to be used to shape actions moving forward. So really excited about that. We're going to have a Mentimeter activity. So that's an opportunity to hear from you and have a little bit of interactivity. And then we'll talk about some regional funding opportunities and go to next steps. So with that, let's go to the next slide and get into it. I'm going to share some updates from the state and some updates about the timeline. I see people are still introducing themselves. Thank you for doing that. And we can go to the next slide. All right, so this is a slide really looking at our timeline so far and kind of what is entailed in the different parts of the process that we're in. So I want to take a couple of minutes to go through that and share some new information that we received from the state and about important dates and deadlines that are still coming up. So as you start on the left, you can see the planning phase, and currently that's the phase that we are in. The outcome for the planning phase is a regional economic development plan. So this is still coming in September is when our region and all regions across the state are being asked to finalize these regional economic development plans. And a lot of the activities that we've seen so far have all been about building a collaborative and data-informed vision for our region. So that's included things like establishing a regional governance structure, and that includes our sub-regional tables as well as our leadership council, conducting research. And I already mentioned that our Cities GPS and Brookings Institution partners have shared with you all the research that they've conducted. It's on our website, but there's been a really deep economic assessment done for our region. And then, of course, what we're going to talk about today is community outreach and engagement. So all of that is leading into the regional economic development plan. Next up is the catalyst phase. And this is our pre-development phase. So we're kind of moving towards implementation, and the catalyst phase is about how do we build capacity to achieve the goals that we've outlined in our planning phase. So this is really focused on bridging the gap between regional strategy planning and project implementation by prioritizing pre-development activities. So we'll go into a little more detail later about the funding and activities of the catalyst phase. But you can see here that we have money for pre-project development. That's capacity building and granting that will go out throughout the region. Money for collaborative operations and compliance. So for Valley Vision and partners to continue to manage the grant, manage the governance, and carry on the management of the process itself. And then finally, resources for sector investment coordinators. So this is really looking at the priority sectors that are chosen and being able to have staffing and resources in order to coordinate the activities of those sectors. And that leads into the implementation phase. So the implementation phase will fund ready-to-go projects that advance the economic development plan. There's some new deadlines that are noted. So you can see the draft SFP is open for public comment from July 2nd to later in July. So that's coming up soon, where they will they'll share their solicitation information so that we can comment on it. And then applications for funding are open September 10th and due November 1st. So that means that our region is going to need to mobilize to think about what are our ready to go projects that we can advance as part of that process. And I wanted to note, I wanted to make reference to the May revise on the state budget, that there is a proposed annual $50 million reduction under the May revise. And so we're still waiting to see how that will play out in the program, but we are anticipating that there's less implementation dollars than what was originally proposed as part of this program. But I do want to emphasize that the planning phase, which is underway and almost complete, and the catalyst phase are both unaffected by the May revise and will continue on as anticipated on the current activities and the catalyst phased activities. And then finally, I want to highlight the tribal funding opportunity. This is a $25 million statewide investment in tribal-led planning and implementation projects. And it must be completed by September 2026. We're awaiting further information from the state on this funding opportunity and how the May revise will impact it. So as we get in these later phases, there's some uncertainty related to our state budget, but we're continuing to move full speed ahead and take advantage of the resources we do have to build significant regional capacity towards inclusive economic growth and development. Let's go to the next slide. And in the next slide as well. So I'm gonna really keep us centered on our North Star or our key goals as we do this work together, because I want to be really clear about what it is we're trying to accomplish and what we're doing to accomplish it. So when we think about the key goals of this program, first of all, we're expanding the economy. This means creating more quality jobs, and the way to achieve this is through the growth of tradable clusters. That means economic clusters where that are attached to more global markets and have the ability to create more jobs. So those are our tradable clusters for our region. And that's the space where we have the ability to create jobs and particularly create quality jobs. And that means jobs that have a livable wage, that have benefits, and that have opportunities for mobility. So that's goal number one, is really expanding our economy and diversifying our economy. Second is reducing barriers. So in order to provide benefits to our underinvested communities, it's really important that we think about the barriers that communities face as they are accessing opportunity. So ensuring that there are pathways and opportunities to access high quality jobs across our historically underinvested communities is a very important part of this program. And we're going to hear a lot more about that in today's program, where we're hearing from those who have been engaged with community and really talking through what are some of the barriers that they've seen. And that's going to inform strategies to reducing those barriers and addressing those issues. And then finally, an important part of this program is achieving climate goals. So that means increasing regional environmental sustainability and resilience, and making sure that the economy that we're growing is responsive to the needs of the future. And that means being climate resilient. So that really articulates our North Star and the key goals that we're trying to achieve. And when we think about how we're trying to achieve those goals, and you look over on the kind of the rivers moving into the North Star there, first of all, it's working on our industry cluster priorities. So if we're doing economic development and creating jobs, we have to be focused on specific economic sectors where we have space to grow and where we can create those accessible pathways. So that's kind of activity number one. Activity number two, this is what we're going to focus on today, inclusionary strategies. So making sure that as we grow our economy, it's not just those who have always benefited will exclusively benefit, right? This is about creating opportunities for inclusion, creating an economy that benefits our historically disinvested communities. And then finally, leaning into creating pathways of opportunity to high quality jobs. So if we are working on diversifying and growing our economy, one part is creating new jobs, and that's a long-term strategy. The other part is creating accessible pathways into available high-quality jobs, and those could exist among some of our local serving sectors, some of our tradable clusters, but it's important that we are creating those inclusive pathways into the jobs that are available now. So that is a little bit about where we are and where we're going. And let's see what's on the next slide. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Isa Avansanya, who's going to talk about the outcomes from community outreach, and she's going to tee up our next agenda item.
Thanks, Evan. And hi, everybody. Good afternoon. It's really good to be with you all here on Zoom today. As Evan said, I'm going to go ahead and move us into one of our main activities on the agenda today, which is to share outcomes from the community outreach and engagement that has been taking place the last 10 months. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start by really acknowledging and also introducing our sub-regional partners who have really been driving this community outreach and engagement work. I know many of our collaborative members are probably already familiar with these organizations. You've probably been attending a lot of the events and meetings that they've been hosting these past 10 months. I'll also note that we have representatives from these organizations joining us today, and you're going to hear a little bit from them later in the presentation as they share some of the potential strategies that have surfaced across these different subregions. But I do want to pause and just acknowledge them and note that they are here with us today. So from Colusa County, we're joined by David Little from the North Valley Community Foundation. From our Placer El Dorado subregion, we're joined by Jessica Carr from the Sierra Business Council. From our Tahoe subregion, we are joined by Derek Martin and Heidi Hill Drum from the Tahoe Prosperity Center. From our Nevada subregion, we're joined by Gil Matthew from the Nevada County Economic Resource Council. From Sacramento and Yolo, we're joined by Civic Thread and the SAC Asian Chamber. We have Catherine Canepa and Annette Smith joining us from those organizations. And finally, from the Yuba Sutter subregion, we also have Civic Thread as our subregional partner in that subregion, and we have Christina Zhang joining us today. So you will hear from all these people a little bit later, as I mentioned, but I did just want to pause and recognize that they are joining us here today and just recognize the incredible work that they've been doing these past 10 months. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start by just walking through a couple of slides that provide a little bit of an overview of the methods of engagement that our subregional partners have been utilizing these past 10 months, as well as some of the barriers that have been shared across the different subregions. After I go over these two slides, I'm actually going to turn it over to each of our subregions. You'll hear from each of them in turn, and they're going to be focused on sharing with you some of the potential strategies that have surfaced in those subregions to try to address these barriers that I'm going to be talking through. So starting with, again, methods of engagement. So just want to pause here and talk a little bit about the types of engagement that our sub-regional partners have been doing across our different communities in the region. What you're seeing in orange are the methods of engagement that were most commonly used, showed up across the different subregions, and then the black text in the lower part of the slide shows some additional methods that were used in certain subregions. Just noting here really the variety of different ways that we've been trying to engage with community members. So everything from, for example, one-on-one interviews, community meetings, focus group discussions. These have both been virtual in some cases, but also quite a few in-person activities and gatherings. We've also been using materials like surveys, newsletters, flyers, social media. I'll also note that many of our subregional partners have been really good about making sure that these types of materials are available in multiple languages, depending on the needs of the population. And then using tools and governance structures, like, for example, steering committees or stakeholder mapping. And this, like I said, just wide variety of engagement methods have really been driving this community outreach and engagement work these past 10 months. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I want to take a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about some of the barriers that have surfaced across our different subregions. Those of you on the call, this is all going to sound, I'm sure, very familiar to many of you just from your experience either living in the communities or working with the communities that you are a part of. Again, what you're seeing in orange represents the barriers that most, if not all, of our subregions had surfaced as being very key issues in their communities. These include things like high unemployment or underemployment, lack of accessible career pathways and training opportunities, issues of childcare, transportation, and housing. And then there are a number of other issues that surfaced, not necessarily across all the different regions, but definitely also big issues in certain subregions. And that's what you're seeing in the black text towards the bottom of the slide. Things like the digital divide, food insecurity, a lack of small business support, among several other issues. Next slide, please. We're going to move on to talking about strategies now. So I'm going to turn it over in a minute to our different subregional representatives, and you're seeing the order in which they'll present here on the screen in front of you. And this is really an opportunity, again, to hear directly from them on what are some of the potential strategies that have surfaced in their communities to try to address some of the barriers that I just went over. Quickly, I see a question in the slide that I'll just answer. These slides and a recording of the meeting will be shared out in the next few days after this meeting concludes. I'll also note that because we're in webinar format, if you're a participant here, you may not have access to use your microphone or camera, but please do put any thoughts, questions you have in the webinar chat. You can also use the Q&A feature, whatever is easiest for you. So please feel free to do that throughout, and we'll also pause and make sure we're giving our subregional representatives and subregional partners an opportunity to address some of those questions. So without any further delay, I'm going to go ahead and start turning it over to our subregions, and we are beginning with the Calusa subregion. So David, if you are on the line, invite you to go off camera and unmute and go right ahead, and I think we can move on to the next slide. Hi, David.
Hey, Lisa, thank you. Thank you. So let's lead with the positives. Let's start with Calusa County's strengths. People in Calusa County are very proud about how they feed America. Calusa produces more rice than any county in the state. Agriculture provides about 1/3 of the jobs in the county. In addition to growing food, Calusa's strengths are land, natural resources, and water. The county has 3 large national wildlife refuges inside of it, and also the Sacramento River running through it. It has ample land and open space. There are just 19 people per square mile. But its strengths are also its weaknesses. With so many jobs linked to agriculture, when the growing season is over, so are the jobs. Calusa every month is neck and neck with Imperial County in Southern California for the highest unemployment rate in the state. For example, unemployment in March was a state high 19.2%. There's also a big income divide between people who own the land and those who work the land. Consequently, Calusa County's per capita income is the lowest in the capital region. The divide extends to so many facets of life in Calusa County, so we sought out inclusionary pathways that provide economic opportunities for disinvested communities. So the first bullet point you see here is the one we heard most often, and that is that there's a severe lack of housing of every type in all areas of the county. Therefore, there is no growth because there's no places for people to live. There's very little building. There's very few homes on the market, both to rent and to buy. People with homes to sell or rent often don't even need to advertise. Rentals are particularly often filled just by word of mouth. But there are places to build. While subdivisions are scarce, there are single lot infill and ADU possibilities that are relatively abundant throughout the county. A pre-approved floor plan library would save money on fees and speed up the building process. Government officials that we've talked to seem to be eager to embrace this concept. The second bullet point here regarding the community center possibility, we heard from residents in Arbuckle in the southern part of the county that they have trouble accessing government services. A community center in Arbuckle could provide employment services, job training, a family center, childcare, access to supportive services, and more. On the subject of job training programs, residents want more than just ag jobs. There's an extreme need for local job training programs, particularly in trades and vocational skills, to empower residents who don't have college degrees. Both the One Stop Employment Center and the high school vocational programs are eager to offer pathways to different types of jobs other than just ag jobs, but funding for these programs is needed. On the subject of a 211 program, we've heard from citizens that there's a great need for certain types of help, but even when those resources are available, many residents don't know how to access them. There's just not an easy way to connect residents with resources. And one big problem is there's no single source of news in Colusa County. A main form of communication is often word of mouth or hanging up a flyer at a gathering place like a post office or a church. So to connect people with resources, it would be beneficial to bring a 211 service to Colusa County that would be available by phone, by text, by web, in Spanish and English, to expand awareness to residents about what's available. Next, regarding the digital divide, we often heard that internet is unreliable and expensive, but it's also essential, particularly when it's inconvenient or even impossible to drive to a population center just to fill out necessary forms or participate in growing telehealth care. This digital divide affects at-risk communities the most. A pooled solution for the lack of cheap and reliable internet could help, something along the lines of community centers with digital access or family centers. And then lastly, this invest in infrastructure bullet point. Some areas of the counties like Maxwell and Arbuckle have a building moratorium on new growth because there's no capacity in their aging water and sewer systems. Also, public transportation is another form of infrastructure that would allowing workers to get to jobs. This public transportation is almost non-existent. Thank you for listening and learning about Colusa County. It's a county where a little bit of investment could pay huge dividends. Thank you, Isa.
Thank you so much, David, for sharing that. And just a reminder to everyone, if you have any thoughts or questions around what David had presented around the Colusa subregion, please feel free to put those in the chat and David can address them directly there, or if we have a little bit of time at the end, we can also discuss them here all together. Thanks, David. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So up next, we're going to be hearing from the Sierra Business Council, our sub-regional partners representing El Dorado and Placer. And I believe we have Jessica Carr joining us today to talk through some of that. Hi, Jessica. We can go ahead and move to the next slide, and Jessica, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just a quick note on a geographic clarification. We are the Placer and El Dorado County subregion, but we do not cover the Tahoe Basin parts of both of those counties. You will hear from the Tahoe side later. So I am Jessica Carr from Sierra Business Council, and I'm here representing the Placer and El Dorado County subregion. I'm actually here on behalf of my wonderful colleague, Sarah Isabel Moe, who could not join us today, but many of you know her and have heard from her. And this slide represents the inclusionary pathways and strategies that Sarah Isabel has identified through her work over the past few months with you all and many other community partners. So thank you for having me. The pathways that are up on my screen or on your screen are the things that the Placer and El Dorado subregion would like to see focus on moving forward. And given our short time, I'm just going to highlight the second two, which is supporting small businesses, particularly those with minority ownership and working lands. So we know that small businesses make up over 99% of all firms, and they provide more than half of private sector jobs. And we also know that in the state of California, there are over 2 million minority-owned small businesses that employ almost 3 million people. So we see this pathway focusing on the development of programming to support minority-owned businesses and entrepreneurship as a way to build wealth in traditionally underinvested communities. And one example that we see as something that might work is for programming, to develop programming that supports cooperative ownership models like ESOPs, worker-owned cooperatives, et cetera. I know that Sarah from Project Equity is on this call as well. So there is a lot of infrastructure set up in the co-op and worker-owned cooperative model area of program development that we see potential in. And then we also see potential in this pathway for business training for childcare providers, both to start new childcare businesses, centers, and in-home daycares, but also to provide supportive business training to existing daycares and childcare centers. So again, I'm just highlighting a couple of the things on this slide. There's much more on here that I'm going to cover. So the second area of focus that I'm just going to quickly talk about is the working lands area inclusionary pathway. So in the foothills and into the forested communities of Placer and El Dorado counties, the economy and livelihoods are largely defined by natural and working lands, these areas that provide life-sustaining resources and also play a critical role in climate mitigation. And there are opportunities that exist here across a broad spectrum of job areas like forest stewardship, prescribed fire, timber harvest, reforestation, and then also support jobs in the related value chains like mapping, environmental planning, trucking, logistics, wood utilization, et cetera. Those jobs can also be in high demand with the right infrastructure and workforce training. And these opportunities might be able to address economic development challenges within the region's disinvested communities while also aligning with California's climate objectives and then resulting ultimately in wildfire mitigation. So some specific initiatives that came through include biomass facilities, wood product innovation through entrepreneurial training, and centralized hubs for training sectors related to working lands. And that is all from me for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jess. And I just want to quickly call out that we're getting so much really good information from our the presentations that our sub-regional partners are walking through. They're presenting at a very high level, but there's so much good information that they have been able to gather over the last 10 months of community outreach and engagement. So if you are on this call, on this webinar and listening, and you're hearing anything that you would like to learn a little bit more about, please go ahead and, like I said, put that in the chat. We're happy to reach back out to you to talk more about that and connect you as well with our sub-regional partners so they can share more of that information with you. And with that, thank you very much. So up next, we have our Tahoe subregion, and I believe we have either Derek or Heidi on the call to talk about their subregion.
I think Derek is here until 2:55 if he wants to go. Otherwise, I can go. Okay, maybe he dropped off. I will go.
Thanks. Thank you.
Sorry, wait, I thought I had him on the webinar until 3, but so we are the Tahoe region that is not El Dorado County and Placer County outside of Lake Tahoe Basin. We are the part that is in the basin, so it's a little challenging, but I'm gonna just briefly talk a little bit about this slide here before I go into our strategies, and that is we've been trying to focus our strategies around the industry clusters up in Tahoe, because as you all know, Tahoe's subregion is very different than the rest of the bigger capital region. Tourism, obviously primary industry cluster up here. It dominates every other economic generator in the region, but it doesn't tend to have high quality jobs. But we are trying to balance the sort of opportunities for high quality jobs in the areas like health and wellness, environmental innovation, and working lands, along with hospitality and tourism. So that's why we have sort of, categorized things in this way. And I think the next slide will go to our strategies. Yes, so our inclusionary pathway strategies. First, I want to acknowledge the incredible work and outreach that Derek has done as the program manager for us and with the We Prosper Together folks. So he has done numerous meetings in the community with our tribal members who represent the Washoe tribe of California and Nevada. And I'm not sure if I saw them represented in the meeting today, but if they're here, welcome. We appreciate you guys. We now have a community liaison position, or rather the tribe will have a community liaison position, which will be wonderful to be shared here in the community. And then we have met with our, mostly our Spanish community members, is the underserved community that we've been trying to reach and hear from. And we've had a few different meetings with our Spanish community members that have been really informative and helpful. So the things that, again, are not going to be a surprise, so I'll just take 1 minute to talk about those, is the issue around housing and childcare. Those are issues across the board, it sounds like, for the larger capital region. And so those are, you know, obviously things that we're working hard to adjust and figure out ways to provide more accessibility and inclusion there. But the two things that I'll focus on are more this component of food insecurity we highlighted. And it's, again, it's not just the inaccessibility to food, it's the cost of food. So our cost of living issues here in Tahoe are already high. Like, I just drove by the gas station. I mean, we're talking $6 a gallon still up here at the lake to put gas in your car. Driving around the lake to get to your job or from outside of the area into the basin is significant. And then again, the high cost of food up here. So it's always a little bit pricier to get things up to Tahoe. So that's an issue that we are working on to improve with our inclusionary strategy. And then the good jobs in these tradable sectors, again, we were fortunate in that we had just finished a very collaborative and inclusive economic development plan for our region right when the We Prosper Together work was getting started. So we completed the Envision Tahoe Prosperity Playbook, and it outlines a number of economic opportunities and strategies. But what we've done with the work through the Valley Vision effort here through We Prosper Together is we took that information, even though we got a lot of feedback from our Spanish community members in that effort, we took it back to the community and asked them again, what is still missing? What is right? And what do you all think about some of these strategies? Again, to, and you know, get our underserved community members into those higher wage jobs in the health and wellness sector, in the environmental innovation sector. And so that was the work of our plan. Oh, sorry. I thought this was later. So I kind of already stole my own thunder. Again, the resiliency is built into the Prosperity Playbook. Again, I talked about the longer commutes, you know, the seasonality of our tourism workforce is also a challenge. So many of our commuters live outside of the area coming in. And then lastly, as we talked about, the main issues towards prosperity mean we need to provide better childcare, we need to provide better food and nutrition access, and then also transportation and housing. Sorry, Isa, thank you. I think I'm done now.
No, no worries at all, Heidi. That was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all that information. All right, and up next, we are turning now to our Nevada subregion, and we have, I believe, Gil Matthew joining us today from the Nevada County Economic Resource Council to talk through potential strategies that have emerged from his subregion. Gil, are you there? You're coming in, I think, a little choppy, Gil, and I think now you're on mute. Do we want to try that one more time? Gil, we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I think we're having some tech issues, Gil. We're having a little trouble hearing you. I think what I might do, I'll go ahead if you want just a couple of minutes to kind of check on your mic and tech. I can go on to the next subregion first and then come back. Does that sound okay? Just wait for a thumbs up from you if that works. Okay, great. We will be returning to the Nevada subregion in just a minute here. Connor, can you go ahead and advance slides? Thank you. And we'll return to Nevada in just a bit, but I'm going to turn first now to our Sacramento and Yolo subregion. We've got Catherine Canepa and Annette Smith joining us today. Catherine and Annette, I will turn it over to you to go through your slides.
Awesome. So much. Thank you so much. I'm going to get us started. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Awesome. Fantastic. So, we've done quite a bit of work in collaboration between the Sacramento Asian Pacific Chamber, Civic Well, Civic Thread, the Black Artist Foundry, and many other of our partners in the community around our community outreach strategy to ensure that we cast as wide a net as possible. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about our inclusionary pathway strategies. I'm going to kick us off before I hand it over to my colleague, Catherine. On the screen, you'll see that one of our first inclusionary strategies was our community engagement and participation. We want to ensure that community members have a voice in the planning and decision-making processes related to any economic development project within our region. Projects that are looking to grow in this region should hold public forums, workshops, and consult with individual groups as it makes sense to gather input and feedback from them, particularly those from traditionally marginalized or minoritized groups. Of course, as a Chamber of Commerce, but small businesses are important to us, but they're also essential to the economic diversification and development of any region. About 95% of our income in California comes on the backs of small businesses. And when you invest in a small business, you're investing on sending a kid to, summer camp or helping a sports team and not just paying dividends and resources to already wealthy individuals. So we really want to foster support for minority and women-owned businesses by creating initiatives that support their development and expansion with access to capital, which continues to be a challenge, but we want to focus on grants or low-interest loans, mentorship programs, business incubators like the Chamber provides, and several others I'm sure here on this call do as well. And then providing co-working office space and technology that continues to be a challenge, difficult for small businesses, small startup businesses to invest in. And so are there opportunities for collaboration in working together in like a co-working space that don't already exist? Targeted job training to develop an inclusive education and training. We really want to be focused and develop training programs that don't train and pray, right? That are truly tied to an economic strategy and to the jobs that exist today and that may exist in the next 3 years. So really being clear about what those expectations are and tailoring the training to the needs of underrepresented, disinvested communities. So, that means maybe it isn't a 9-to-5 Monday through Friday kind of training. It needs to be in an accessible time frame, maybe after hours, on the weekend or something. Offer childcare because that's always a challenge. If it does have to be during the day, are there other resources that can be provided to the population taking the training so that it offsets their income requirements? Our inclusive, we also want to, for the sustainable economic and inclusive economic policies, I can't seem to read today. We really want to focus on inclusive procurement and collaboration policies, ensuring that our local municipalities have a small business procurement strategy, and that a percentage of their expenses every year are actually spent in the communities that pay taxes to support those municipalities, right? It always breaks my heart when I hear about some city or county who's hiring some big consulting firm from outside of even our state, when in fact, I'm positive that within their community or at least within our state, we can find those resources for them and keep our dollars local. And we want to make sure that we are circulating that money within the community and helping build capacity for our local businesses. And then as it relates to information access, one of the biggest challenges is not only access to broadband and technology, but information. One of the things we heard quite a bit in our outreach is that, there's great job opportunities, but people don't hear about them. They don't know how to access them. They don't know what kind of training is required. And so I think that would be a fairly easy lift for our organizations and institutions to do a better job of actually communicating externally of their organizations, like all the things that are available and how people can access them. I'm going to pause there and turn it over to Catherine.
Thank you. We can move to the next slide. So as we start to think about how the inclusionary strategies actually come into play, like obviously we are in a system where it's very challenging to create high wage jobs and to really incorporate equity elements into those things. So part of that implementation will be in projects that are held accountable to some of these inclusionary strategies that we're seeing across the different subregions. And in Sacramento YOLO, there have been a number of projects submitted through delegations inventory form, actually 21, I believe, to date. And a number of these, though they were submitted at a high level, do have many elements that we think fit within the inclusionary strategies and will help kind of advance the equity framework of We Prosper Together. So, you know, kind of regardless of industry alignment, there are a couple of elements in projects that we see as really being essential. So some of those are listed on this slide. So projects that include elements that support essential needs that have been elevated as critical concerns across all the subregions: childcare, transportation, food access, and healthcare. Jobs that prioritize local hire or create local jobs for people, those that build capacity for small businesses and are specifically geared for low wage or underserved workers or communities that have traditionally not received that investment. And then of course, projects that support green transition and general sustainability efforts. And fundamentally that include community benefits agreements that formalize the components that are intended to generate equity, so that there is accountability to the community members these jobs will affect, and that they will be available to. We can move to the next slide. So on this slide, you can see some pulled out elements of projects that have been submitted so far. These are components of projects, so maybe you may recognize some of them. We are actually, shameless plug for an event happening this week where we will be presenting some of the projects that have been emerging in the Sacramento YOLO subregion and are doing some vetting with community to think about what might they want to add into projects to really result in equity, local jobs, all of the things we previously said. But these are some of the things that seem to be promising within these inclusionary strategies. So starting on the left, as far as the community co-creation and empowerment inclusionary strategy, there has been a project emerging that is an innovation hub to provide a collaborative environment for supporting BIPOC farmers. There are also technical assistance programs and support for assisting small businesses to compete for state government contracts and other funding opportunities that are traditionally harder to access when you may not have that institutional expertise, and arts spaces that are emerging for creatives to help them build their businesses. There are also many workforce development programs developing through the inventory forum that are stipended and are intended to reach people where they are and to be able to make them accessible for folks who have traditionally not been able to participate in these programs because they've been working multiple jobs. There are also several workforce development programs that are emerging that are supporting the green transition and are looking at things like solar and industries that are just growing as we move into our excessive climate change era. As far as sustainable and inclusive economic policies, this is largely intended to speak to the overarching goals of systemic change, but there are a number of projects that support the electrification of small landscaping businesses so that those aren't left behind, and other projects that kind of fit within that overarching theme. And then as far as information access goes, there's one project that is emerging that is a digital tool to support students in navigating the higher ed system. Again, getting to those who may not have the institutional knowledge or who may have trouble moving up the ladder without certain qualifications met, but that's really intended to help demystify that process. So those are just a couple of the things. This is not an exhaustive list. This is definitely not all of the projects, but these are a couple of examples. So more information later in the presentation on the event if you're interested to see a broader swath of the projects that we've got. But yeah, I'll close there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Annette and Catherine. And yes, we've got a slide a little bit later in the presentation with a QR code to the event that people can participate in if they'd like to learn more about any of these projects that you just shared. So thank you very much. I'm gonna check to see, Gil, do you want to test out your mic, see if we can hear you a little bit better?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear. That's perfect.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
Connor, let's go ahead and move back towards the Nevada slides, please.
So thank you for the opportunity. And I, like David Little over in Calusa, we have one of a similar problem. We have about 9 people per acre in Nevada County. We have a tremendous amount of federal land here. And it's a long ways from one end of the county to the other. So our strategy was to go out and interview as many people one-on-one as we could. We did more than 100 face-to-face, one-on-one interviews in our process. And one of the overarching things for all of these 3 topics here was to take a look at youth and to particularly those youth that are part of a family that is a disinvested part of our community. And can we arrest that and turn those people, help those people develop a better sense of what's available to them? Because what we discovered was in the disinvested community, there wasn't a sense of much opportunity, and they were already sort of buried in a lifestyle that was difficult to change. So we're doing a lot of work relative to youth in this part of the project. So establishing programs that provide skills training, certification areas and relevant industry. We work heavily with Sierra College, with the Nevada County Contractors Association, the Curious Forge, in building training programs for that youth community. And supporting initiatives that explore the impact of technology on marginalized communities. Again, we work heavily with the high schools, the intermediate schools, and the colleges on building opportunities to expose technology to that disinvested community and to show them that it's not really as difficult a task as they might have thought it was. So much of it is about a training and showing the opportunities. And of course, we do a lot of collaborating with industry associations, stakeholders, and to help them develop guidelines that are that allow the disinvested community to be more approachable to them. So we do that in a variety of ways. We have a couple of very interesting projects going on over here. One, we have a youth commission made up of high school seniors. These are students that represent the entire student body to the community at large. It's a county funded operation. And then we have a project over here called CEO, the Creating Entrepreneurial Opportunities. Again, a high school based program, a 4-credit school where they learn how to become entrepreneurs. They actually build businesses. So I think working with the youth and sort of interrupting that, particularly in the disinvested community, and showing them another path that's available to them, that they don't necessarily have to follow the path that their parents took. So that's kind of the way we're working with this this operation. So did we get through the potentials industry aligned? Yeah. So here was the establishing of partnerships and the diversity of the disinvested group. One of the things in Nevada County, and particularly in Western Nevada County, is that we don't have a high population of the disinvested community. We're somewhat blessed in that regard. But what happens is those who are in the disinvested community tend to be less visible. So it took more industry for us to find that disinvested community and interact with them and discover the needs that they had, the barriers they had. But it's been a great project. We're excited about the future that has brought this to light. And so thanks to the state of California and Valley Vision for giving us an opportunity to focus on this area. So thank you very much, Isa.
Thank you so much, Gil, for sharing that. I'll flag that we have a question in the chat from Elisa Nelson. I'll go ahead and read it out, and you're welcome to respond or also type a response in the chat if you prefer. So Lisa says, it's interesting to hear this from Nevada County about the ways of including youth. Did the one-on-one interviews include any youth, and what age ranges? Gil, I don't know if you want to respond to that now or just respond in the chat?
Yes,
Oh,
out
go
of
ahead.
the some 120, approximately 35 were youth under the age of 21. Everybody 21 and over we consider to be adult. So yeah, we had a fair representation of that. And the next question was, we'd love to connect with the youth entrepreneurship run programs. I will get with Monique and give you the data on the CEO program. It's an exciting program that we partner with the high school, with the Economic Resource Council and the county, all of us partnering together on the CEO program. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks, Gil. And I'll let you all continue to talk in the chat and exchange information if you have not done that yet. All right, and moving on to our 6th subregion. If we could go ahead and skip back to the slides for the Yuba Sutter subregion. And we have Pristina on the call today.
I'm still muted. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi, Pristina. Go ahead.
I cannot see myself, but I think that is just fine. So hi, my name is Pristina. I'm representing our Yuba Sutter subregion. I'm also a resident of southern part of Yuba County. So thank you so much for switching my slides earlier. I'll first start off by saying, before really getting into the slide, is that the creation of these strategies were made possible by engagement coming in from both angles of the community and the business side. As you saw earlier in the slides that were presented, we did use a series of focus groups and informational interviews led by Center for Workers' Rights, sub-regional roundtables, which we had the opportunity to speak with most of you on this call from Yuba Sutter, in intersection with the 2020 to 2025 Yuba Sutter Comprehensive Economic Development Strategies, which was led by our past partners at Yuba Sutter Economic Development Corporation. We do believe that the starting point is to first address community challenges and barriers, such as the cost of living and minimum wage barriers, opportunities for on-the-job training and skill building, transportation access, employer-sponsored benefits, and difficulties in job advancement caused by labor contractors, as well as instability of seasonal work. From our conversations, we made note that local jobs may offer the largest opportunity to support existing skills in alignment with those industries and jobs that we've seen be consistently available or have seen a growth over the last 10 years. So our North Star is to see projects funded that accurately reflect our subregion's definition of those 4 project criteria, with a focus on local job opportunities that uplift diverse but historically underinvested communities, low-wage workers, and entry-level skills, in addition to building up our infrastructure to attract and sustain economic development. Before covering these inclusionary pathway strategies, we wanted to make note that these strategies, while may be relevant to our rural communities, don't completely reflect all of the unique strategies that would support our rural communities' lived experience and needs. So we are continuing to work on expanding our learnings in that area. So these strategies here today were developed, rooted in the experiences that were shared by low-wage workers living across Yuba and Sutter County. So I'll hop right into it. As cost of living is significantly rising, I don't think that's a surprise to any of us. Our community has shared that the #1 strategy for them is to raise the minimum wage. This can be a really polarizing statement, but in the experiences of the low-wage workers that were interviewed, they expressed that this would be the foundation for ensuring that they can even afford basic necessities, reduce the stress of financial instability, and it would allow them more opportunity and time for continued personal growth. The second one would be equitable workers' rights education. This would be educational initiatives that can share with workers about their personal entitlements, regulations about their wage, workplace safety, and benefits. Having workers know their rights and their entitled privileges is really a significant cornerstone to even moving towards inclusionary strategies, and just basically knowing what am I entitled to, and is the workplace situation or environment that I'm in, is it appropriate? The third would be labor contractor regulations. And some of the responses that we got were focused in the agricultural labor contractor regulations, but I think this could be for really any industry that has labor contractors. So regulating labor contractors would then empower workers to be able to negotiate higher wages directly with their employers. This would allow for stability in seasonal employment, which we do see in our agricultural industries. Having these financial safeguards could really mitigate the income fluctuations when there are off seasons in agriculture, or any economic shocks that may happen. And the next slide will show two strategies that include in-house local leadership and training programs, as well as education and skill development. So these strategies strongly rely on project owners and employers to offer robust resources to meet the needs of workers and fill the gap to support their upward mobility, skill building, and education. Training and leadership development opportunities should be available in-house to showcase opportunities to workers so they can attain high-quality employment through their current roles. This can support employee retention and mitigate the needs to search for advancement in other places. Effective strategies to support education and skill building should also address qualification gaps to quality jobs. Project owner and employer resources should work to eliminate language barriers, which may overshadow the person's significant skills and knowledge throughout interpretive services. Educational institutions such as our local Yuba College and local trade programs are strong pillars to linking students to promising and quality jobs. Continued support and collaboration with education leaders can help ensure that programs meet both the interests of the community intersected with identified opportunity industries that are consistently available or growing. And additionally, a focus should be placed on opportunities to bridge degrees that were received internationally to qualify for opportunity jobs in Yuba Sutter. Let's see here. Okay. So I'll go to the next slide, please. As of recent, we've had 4 projects inventoried, and we do hope to see it grow. So in our past presentation, we did recommend, the one in May, we did recommend enhancing entry-level opportunities to meet promising job criteria for Yuba Sutter, as well as to build up education and skilled workers on the job, while addressing barriers to equity. And so of those Yuba Sutter opportunity industry areas that we identified, it did include construction, public sector government, agriculture, education, health and social services, as well as hospitality and tourism. So when we compare that list to the projects inventoried here, we can see that if you read these descriptions, they're very strong projects. They meet project criteria. They represent strong opportunity areas for sustainable job creation in Yuba Sutter. They also work to strengthen our infrastructure, and offer job opportunities that meet our community where they're at. We do hope to see this list grow, and we'll be utilizing this summer to continue circulating the project inventory form. And that's it for our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. And thank you so much to all our subregional partners for taking the time today to join us in this meeting and share some of those findings with our broader collaborative group. Again, just want to really call out and acknowledge the importance of the work that our subregional partners have been doing throughout the last 10 months to do this community outreach and engagement. We would not be able to move forward in this California Jobs First effort if it weren't for that work that they're doing. So really, really appreciate the work of all our subregional partners. And thanks for being here today. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. All right, so for those of you on this webinar, you have just heard a ton of really great information from our different subregions. Maybe some of that was already familiar to you if you've been participating in your own subregions community outreach and engagement activity. Maybe some of what you're hearing about other subregions is new information, but just want to acknowledge that we just spent the last half an hour, 45 minutes listening to all of this really good information. And now I'm going to move us towards a more interactive activity. We're going to be doing a Mentimeter activity. So I'm going to ask Connor to take the slides down so I can go ahead and pull up our Mentimeter activity. Thank you, Connor. Okay, can I get a thumbs up from someone on Valley Vision or CSS team if you're seeing the Mentimeter screen correctly. I will take that as a yes, and hopefully everyone is. Yes,
We
great.
can see it, yes.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I think some of the people on this call are probably already familiar with how to use Mentimeter. For those who are seeing this for the first time, in just a second, I'll walk through how to do it. I see we're already getting answers. That's great. But really the goal of this interactive Mentimeter activity is we want to hear from you all on this call about what are some of the, or which among the strategies shared today reflected important areas of concern that you are seeing in your community. And what we really want is to just get that feedback of if there are particular things you heard that you feel really resonated and really speak to, like I said, some of the concerns that you are seeing in your community, we want to hear that from you. So if you are unfamiliar with Mentimeter, you're seeing this for the first time, the easiest way to access this and participate is to open up your phone and point your phone's camera at the QR code you're seeing on the screen. That QR code will automatically take you to a space where you can type different answers to these questions. And you'll see we already have some people typing those answers in. If that's not available to you, another thing you can do is open up any internet browser, whether that's on your phone or on your laptop, and you can type menti.com, that's menti.com, that you're seeing here right at the middle top of the screen. And then you'll see a blank space to enter in a number code, and you'll enter this number code that you're seeing again in the top center part of your screen. So that's 31182133. I'm seeing people start to populate answers, which is great. I'm gonna give us all just a couple of minutes of silence to continue to do that. If anybody is having trouble accessing Mentimeter, please go ahead and put that in the chat or the Q&A, and someone from our team can help troubleshoot. Otherwise, I'm gonna just give us all a couple of minutes of silence to populate. And Gretchen on our team has just put in the chat the website you can enter and also the number code you can use if the QR code is not working for you. I'll go ahead and call out some of the common themes that we're seeing here. Please continue to put to share responses. I can see they're continuing to come in, which is great. Seeing responses here that echo some of the strategies shared around strategies to address issues such as childcare, housing, transportation. Also seeing ag tech innovation support, clean energy projects, transition to electrifying businesses, entrepreneurship training. See lots of responses still coming in, so we'll give folks another couple of minutes, and I'll continue to just kind of scroll through so you can all see what everyone is sharing. Seeing support for small businesses, access to capital, workforce job training, youth leadership and partnership roles. And as always, if anyone has any thoughts or questions about what you're seeing in front of you, please feel free to use our chat to share those with the group. Okay, we're going to keep this Mentimeter link open. We're seeing a lot of responses that really echo some of what was shared by our different sub-regional partners. This link is going to stay open even after this meeting. So if you think of other things that or other strategies that you feel really resonated with what you're seeing in your communities, feel free to keep putting in responses through that same link. That will all get captured here, and we'll also share that out together with all the other follow-up materials from this collaborative meeting. I'm going to go ahead and stop screen sharing this for the moment. And I'm going to ask Connor to please bring back up our slides. Thank you very much, Connor, and thank you, Taylor, for that comment. Yes, we love our Mentimeter. And also, I will say if anyone here has thoughts about, other ways that you'd like these meetings to be interactive, please let us know. We think Mentimeter is a great tool, but if anyone has other suggestions, we're always open to that. All right, Connor, go ahead and move us over to the next slide. All right, so now we're going to move on to one of the second main activity under our agenda, which is to provide some regional funding opportunity updates. If you have been following or tracking this California jobs effort for the past few months, what we're about to share about the Catalyst Fund might not be new information for you. And for those of you who are just starting to participate in the California Jobs First process, encourage you to really tune into this. It'll give you an idea of kind of the direction that this effort is heading towards in the next few months. Go ahead, Connor, and move to the next slide. All right, so Evan talked a little bit about this earlier, the Catalyst Fund. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about what the components of the Catalyst Fund and what types of activities are targeted by that fund and by that phase of California Jobs First. So just to reiterate, the main purpose of the Catalyst Fund is to really bridge the gap between regional strategy planning and project implementation by prioritizing pre-development activities. And we'll give you some specific examples of what those pre-development activities are in a later slide. So the total amount of the Catalyst Fund is $14 million per region. That $14 million is broken up into different activity buckets. And in these next slides, we're going to kind of give an overview of what each of those buckets entails. So go ahead to the next slide. So first, as part of the Catalyst Fund, there's about 3.5 million set aside for continued collaborative operations, as well as compliance and grant administration. What does that mean? So it's $3.5 million to continue to support outreach and engagement activities, which has been the main subject of our collaborative gathering this afternoon. So continuing to support these types of activities to make sure that our communities are still very much front and center and actively participating in these efforts. Other activities would include continuously updating research to keep plans current for future funding opportunities. So again, a lot of the data that you heard during our first collaborative gathering earlier this year. It also includes things like supporting the implementation phase application process and supporting projects in obtaining additional sources of funding, whether that be other state funds, federal funds, private or philanthropic funds, to make sure that we're leveraging all these resources to advance projects in our region. Next slide, please. There's also $1.5 million allotted to what is called sector investment coordinators. This sector investment coordination role really speaks to supporting the implementation of our different cluster strategies by coordinating projects and supporting the development of systems to support success for these projects. So this is really, how are we taking this from planning to implementation? It includes things like finding and applying for state, federal, and private grants, as well as, very importantly, continuing to liaise with workforce and economic development partners and community-based organizations as we advance this effort. Next slide, please. So this is the bulk of the funding under the Catalyst Fund. It's $9 million for project pre-development. This $9 million is what will be funded out throughout our region through an RFP process that, as Evan mentioned, we can expect that RFP to be released later this year in October. What exactly are pre-development activities? So you're seeing here on this slide some examples of that, including, for example, feasibility studies, market analysis, environmental assessments, surveys, and the like. establishing an equity framework to advance inclusionary strategies, securing long-term funding opportunities, and local workforce and staff development. Next slide, please. Monique, I'm seeing your question in the chat. I'll go ahead and read it out loud. Can you talk a little bit more about how the Catalyst Fund supports identifying additional sources of funding? So thank you for that question, Monique. I'll give an initial answer, then would invite Evan and my other colleagues to chime in as well. I think one of the big focuses of the Catalyst Fund is enabling the region to line up and tee up other sources of funding in addition to what is coming out of Jobs First. So a key pillar of both Catalyst and implementation phase is really how do we build that capital stack? And that's one of the things that Catalyst Fund is really going to try to support, is how do we advance a project and how do we take the regional plan that came out of the planning phase, use it to advance these projects in such a way that they are teed up to leverage all these underfunding opportunities. So I guess to put a finer point on it, very specifically Catalyst Fund, part of what Catalyst Fund is advancing is the ability to seek out these other sources of funding and add that in to be able to advance those same priorities. We'll pause, ask if that answers the question. And then one more thing I'll say is I think the specifics of a lot of these, I think we're still very much in the process of figuring out. I think right now the focus of our regional effort is in identifying our priority strategies, whether that's cluster strategies or, like you're hearing here, what our inclusionary strategies are to be embedded through our whole economic development plan process. So details for how this is actually going to be reflected in the distribution of funds, we don't have that quite yet, but you will start to see that in the next few months. I'll pause and just check. I know you can't come off your microphone, Monique, but we'll wait for either a comment or a thumbs up from you if that answered your question. Then also just invite Evan or others on our team to chime in if there's anything I missed.
Yeah, I think you said it just right, Isa. Thanks. And thanks for the question. I think that the Catalyst Fund is all about building capacity to get our region investment ready. So I'd say aligned and investment ready. And so as we are deploying some of those capacity building funds, we really will have a lens towards developing our capacity across a variety of different funding sources, just like Isa said. So that'll be a really important measure of success, I think, for this initiative, is how are we able to draw from funds from diverse sources.
Thanks, Evan. All right, so Connor, can you go ahead and move us to the next slide? Want to quickly flag, we mentioned these at the front end of the meeting, but just because we just went through a little bit of that overview of Catalyst Fund, I want to again flag these very important dates to remember. So the one coming up the soonest is the implementation phase draft SFP is going to be released by the state in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And there will be a public comment period open between July 2 to July 22nd and 23rd. Valley Vision and its partners are going to be submitting public comment for that. Anyone is welcome to submit public comment, but if you're tracking that and as you're seeing it, you have any thoughts about it that you would like Valley Vision to incorporate in its public comment, please feel free to share that with us. We'll make sure that's included. Also, as we said earlier, our target release for our regional Catalyst Fund RFP is in October. And then the application period for implementation phase funding is targeted from September 10 to November 1, with the caveat that some of these dates might change as we move forward, but we'll provide you those updates as they come. And then, of course, we are going to have another collaborative gathering similar to this one. We do these gatherings quarterly. The next one will be in the fall. We don't have a date set for it just yet, but you will get that information as soon as we have it via our social media channels and our newsletter. If there's anyone on this call who is not yet an official member of the collaborative, maybe you're just joining these meetings or hearing about this for the first time, feel free to reach out to us. In a couple of slides, we'll have contact information so we can officially add you to our collaborative, or at the very least add you to our newsletter so you're getting all these updates as we share them. Next slide, please. I also want to flag just a couple of upcoming events we have that might be of interest to everybody on this call. So First, the California Economic Summit is coming to Sacramento on October 8 to 10. For those of you who are not familiar with this event, this is a statewide annual event that brings together from across the state leaders in economic development from across a number of different sectors. It's a really great opportunity to connect with people from different regions who are engaged in these different economic development and community efforts across the state. A big focus for this upcoming economic summit is going to be the California Jobs First effort, so that will be a really interesting piece of this. The location changes every year. I believe the last time the summit came to Sacramento was in 2016. So really excited to have the summit back here. It's also an opportunity to showcase what is exciting and what is happening in our region. So that'll be a really great event. There's a QR code if anyone wants to scan it and learn a little bit more. Next slide, please. Also want to flag the event that Catherine mentioned earlier in her presentation, the open house that Civic Thread is hosting this Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Strategies for an Equitable Economy. You'll learn a little bit more about some of the projects surfacing in the Sacramento-Yolo region, and you'll have an opportunity to provide some input on those projects. So again, QR code available if you'd like to scan and learn more. Next slide, please. And another SAC-YOLO event, coming up on July 16th, the SAC Asian Chamber, together with its partners, including Civic Well, Valley Vision, and the California Jobs First effort, is going to be hosting a We Prosper Together convening of businesses in the region to talk a little bit more about how we can engage employers as we move towards refining our cluster priorities for the region. The QR code is also available on the screen if you want to scan that and learn more. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it back over to Evan in just a second to close us out. It's 3:20. We're always happy to give folks time back. We know everybody is busy. And just a final note, if you all have events in your region that are happening that you'd like shared out, please feel free to send that our way, and we can include it in these meetings or possibly in some of our other channels. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Evan to wrap things up for us.
All right, thanks, Isa, and thanks everyone. Really appreciate everybody tuning in today. And I really got a lot out of hearing the presentations and understanding more about the intersections across our different subregions, and also the specific opportunities and challenges that that are coming out as we as our partners engage. So really time well spent in my view. I want to, like I said, thank all of our participants for tuning in. Really appreciate your participation, and this would not be a collaborative initiative without the collaboration of all of you. So I appreciate that. I want to put a lot of appreciation out to our sub-regional partners who really have been doing extraordinary and very deep work in community engagement. And that was reflected here, and there's much more that wasn't reflected here. I know they had really brief presentations, but lots to work from as we think about strategy building in the next stages of this initiative. I want to thank Valley Vision staff for putting this event together, including the back-end tech part and all the materials going into it, as well as Community Strong Solutions for support in the project and in this work. And, you know, I think in terms of thinking about next steps, you heard, like I said, as we opened the meeting, you heard from our research partners last time, and you've heard from them a couple of times, of really looking at our market opportunities within our region to grow jobs, create accessible opportunities, reduce barriers, and build a more climate resilient and thriving economy. And now we've heard from community in terms of what's really bubbling up and what we're hearing from. And the unique challenge of this initiative is to braid these together into some economic development strategies that really speak to the needs of our disinvested communities and also provide us opportunity to grow and diversify our economy. So it's an ambitious project, but I'm really excited about where we are and where we're going from here. And I'm appreciative to the state of California for giving us the opportunity to you know, really lend time, energy, effort, and resources into an exercise like this. So with that, I am happy to be giving everybody some time back, and I hope everybody has a great afternoon. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.